Hello, everybody. This is Noah Mashni. I'm Solutions Architect and Product Specialist here at Deque. Appreciate everybody joining us for the webinar today. Laura, is my audio still coming through okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Awesome. Well, let's jump in. We wanted to set this up. This is sort of the third and I guess fourth and final installment of this webinar series we've done so far. We did sort of a generalized how does accessibility play into the software development lifecycle in general. My colleague Travis did a whole session about product managers and how to sell this idea internally. And then a few months ago, I did tips for development. How does accessibility testing impact development? And here we are today, capping this off with QA, right? How does accessibility testing affect QA? How does this affect my team? Maybe I'm a QA tester or manager or automation engineer. Accessibility is a new requirement for my team. I'm curious to know what am I in for, right? So that's what today is all about, is looking at, how does this impact QA? What are my options for tooling and access and resources so that my team can start doing accessibility testing, as part of what we're doing already to gain, efficiencies and consistency and sustainability of the program. So that's what we're really going to be talking about today. So today we're going to talk about why accessibility is important and how implementing it into the QA process, can help make a QA team more effective. Accessibility, is a vital piece of the QA puzzle. We'll take a look at a couple of diagrams here in a minute to talk about how things have historically been and kind of how we look at things nowadays and how we can kind of weave this type of testing into what's already going on. So that it doesn't become this added task and we can all be testing and helping to churn out accessible content just as sort of standard operating procedure. So in terms of what accessibility testing entails and its potential impact on the QA process, so less about why we do accessibility in QA, more about how we do accessibility in QA. We're going to talk a little bit about automation. How do we leverage automation? I'm sure we're all aware that in order to keep up with new agile practices and the general velocity of development going on, we need to leverage as much automation as possible. So we'll talk a little bit about automation, and then with regard to testing that automation can't do for us, we need to talk about manual testing to kind of close the gap there and everything in between. So we'll talk about that. And then once we've gone through a couple of slides and talked a little bit about those concepts, we'll actually jump into some demonstrations of QA type of testing for accessibility, looking at automated testing that may be part of your CI/CD pipeline. So this is for any of you out there that are QA automation engineers. We'll take a look at a couple of end-to-end and unit testing frameworks and how automation and accessibility can play together. We'll take a look at comprehensive manual testing through the lens of Deque's licensed software WorldSpace Assure and what it looks like to do comprehensive manual testing. And then kind of in between these two, fully automated and fully manual, is this in-between space where we can look at some simulated like AT testing or user acceptance testing, leveraging the WorldSpace Attest browser extension, and talking about kind of what exists between automation and comprehensive manual testing. So where does this all fit in? Anybody who has been attending any of the other webinars we've done in this series will be familiar with the next two slides, but it's important for us to kind of take a look at, where does accessibility fit into the software development lifecycle? So historically, accessibility has been a post-production consideration. This turns out to be a really expensive way to go about testing for anything, really. Accessibility being tested for after the fact means that if you find some substantial accessibility bug in your product after it's been deployed, that means somebody's got to go back in and take apart this fully functional machine to fix something and then put it back together in such a way that nothing else breaks. And that's an expensive and difficult process. And so, this is not the ideal way to consider accessibility. And so what Deque likes to talk about is making accessibility part of the entire software development lifecycle. That way we are creating accessible content from the beginning. And the QA section of this is really vital, right? In previous talks, we discussed training and services for design, with inclusivity. In my last webinar, we talked about proper tooling and processes for developers to be able to create accessible content. And today, just as important as all these other things is how do we make accessibility integrated into the QA process? The reality is that we can't catch everything through automation, so it's not realistic for us to expect development to just test and fix everything in their phase, because there are necessary manual tests that need to be done to achieve full compliance for if you're shooting for WCAG 2.0 or 2.1 or 508. Manual testing is absolutely a requirement. We can use automation to assert whether or not alternative text exists for an image. However, that automation cannot tell us if that alternative text is descriptive. It requires manual human testing to be able to assert whether or not that text is descriptive, or that the focus order is both navigable and logical, or that there's no keyboard traps or stuff like that. So there's always necessary manual testing, and that's important to note if your goal is full compliance with these guidelines. And so that's why testing in QA is really important. So, with an understanding of why testing in QA is important as opposed to post-production testing, this brings us to how, right? So I've sort of swallowed the pill of why. I get it. It's more cost-effective. It makes sense. We've already got practices in place that allows us to kind of piggyback off those good practices and do accessibility testing along with it. So how do we go about doing that? So that's where some of this tooling really comes into play, right? With the right tools, we can do a lot. As I said, it's unrealistic to expect development to push out 100% accessible content. 100% WCAG compliance will always require manual testing, and the reality is that the pace at which we expect development to churn out content is such that we can't expect them to spend overly much time manually testing stuff, because they're expected to keep up some pace. So, the expectation should be that development is using automation to test for accessibility. But as stated, there's always going to be manual testing or further testing beyond that automation, right? That's required. But here again, proper tooling, even in QA with manual testing, small efforts with the right tools in QA can have large impacts. So using things like the browser extension, the World Space of Test browser extension that we'll get to in a minute, can empower QA testers, maybe an embedded tester as part of a Scrum team who isn't doing full manual compliance testing, but can still cover a lot of ground with the right tool. And then for those manual testers, again, using the right tool can help breed the consistency and efficiency that you need to keep up with the pace of testing. So, leveraging proper tooling as part of a QA process to test through accessibility, is a big deal, and it's a big part of making it a sustainable practice. So now understanding why this is important and understanding a little bit about how we do that, let's take a look at how these tools can work and what it takes to get them into place. So the first thing I'd like to take a look at is the automated portion of this testing. So again, I need to get out of that. So for anybody doing automated testing as part of a CI/CD process, people who are writing up end-to-end or unit tests or integration tests as part of a DevOps pipeline, you've poured blood, sweat, and tears into building an automated testing structure that will drive the front end of your application or website around and test out the functionality of the front end. Does this button do the right thing? Do these things expand and collapse the way they should? Do I not have any collisions, right? There's all this awesome automated front end testing that can be in place. And this is one of those areas where accessibility testing can very easily become, part of the fabric of that testing. So what I've got set up here, and I apologize for I don't want, we're not going to get too code heavy. I just wanted to make a brief demonstration of what this automated testing really looks like. So this is an end-to-end test that is set up in Protractor. So we're doing front-end end-to-end testing on an Angular application. And I've just got 3 basic it blocks that are testing some functionality of my little application. This is sort of assuming I'm a QA automation engineer and I already have this test in place. And so if accessibility is new to my team and I already have this testing in place, I then want to say, okay, well, how can I add accessibility into this test to kind of capture that during the automated testing I'm already doing? And so here's that same spec file, the same 3 it blocks, boom, 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 but I've brought in my WorldSpace Attest API, right? So I'm loading in these assets here. And then at the end of each functional test, I am dropping in just a couple lines to call my Attest API to scan the screen state, gather those results, and feed them to a built-in reporting service. And so what this does is while the automation structure is driving around the front end, as we get new screen states in each it block, I'm able to take a scan of the whole page or maybe just a section of the page by using my include or exclude methods, gather all of these results, aggregate them and generate a single report at the end of my test that's already going to be run. And so in that way, I very easily am able to inject accessibility testing as part of an existing testing structure. Similarly for unit testing, here I've got an enzyme test set up for a form control as part of a React application. Here I'm just testing some simple functionality of my form elements here, my form control. And if I want to bring in accessibility, again, all I need to do is import, my WorldSpace Attest API stuff and add it into my functional tests as part of the unit test. So now it's going to be anytime this unit test is run, I'm going to be able to gather accessibility testing data at the exact same time. And because I'm using WorldSpace Attest and I'm getting the integrated reporting service, I can do really cool stuff like add this into maybe a Jenkins process. And so I'm publishing an XML test result set, and that is automatically plumbed into my CI server so that all of my accessibility test data becomes sort of part and parcel with what's already going on, throughout the DevOps pipeline. Laura, there's a comment in the chat about, oh, you're already on it. Fantastic. Sorry if there are any issues with the captions. Laura's investigating. So this is kind of looking at the automation pipeline and how that testing can become part of that. So that's a big deal. It's a big part of the testing pipeline. The next sort of layer on top of that is looking at what can be achieved using something simple like the browser extension. This isn't maybe going to the full manual testing process, but this is taking a look at what can I achieve with, again, proper tooling and a small effort to get a substantial amount of accessibility testing done and catch a lot of those bugs. And so here I'm working on a project. This is an application I'm working on, and I want to use my WorldSpace Attest browser extension to be able to, maybe just take a quick scan, right? Let's go somewhere that's got some more interesting stuff. So if I take a scan here and see I've got a number of different issues that I've caught here using my browser extension, this is purely through the automated rule set. Because I'm using the WorldSpace Attest extension and not the X extension, I have the option to do some cool stuff like export my results to a CSV file. And I can then, import that into Jira to create tickets for my development team to go back and fix. Just sort of more direct integration there. But what's coming out of the browser extension is all the information I need to understand what issues do I have, where do these issues exist on the page, right? If I'm using the extension, I have a highlight tool which allows me to, work through the page and highlight what issues are wrong, either visually through the highlight tool there, or I could leverage the inspect node and go in and use that. If I need to go above and beyond what's happening purely through automation, again, the WorldSpace Attest browser extension empowers me with some pretty cool tools here to test for more than just what I can do through automation. So the simulate tool, which is sort of like simulated assistive technology testing for my page here, is breaking down the page structure to give me an idea of, is my heading structure good? Am I using lists in the right way? All the links on the page, do they have discernible text? And so I can very easily use this tool to click through all the different text here and find the links and very quickly make the evaluation as the tester, the human tester, is this text related to this link? Is that descriptive? Is it discernible? And so if it's not, then that's an issue and I need to document it so that it can be fixed. But being able to use this tool and highlight all these things in one shot, here I'm looking at all the different images in this list of blog posts, and I need to know, is the accessible text associated with this image descriptive? Instead of having to go into the developer console in the browser and find the element and read the alternative text that way, or even open up my screen reader and test it that way, I can pull it up and all in one shot. See all this information here in front of me. So we're kind of building in efficiency, with this tool. We released this as a feature, some 6-9 months ago, I think, and we've been doing some early research on the efficiencies gained. And just to kind of get back to that, small efforts with the right tools, a person could use this WorldSpace Attest browser extension and catch, maybe half of the issues, half of the bugs in a project, right? So not talking about WCAG coverage, but just if you had a project and there were 100 accessibility bugs in it, half of them could be caught through the automated rule set. With the testing, combining maybe a screen reader like NVDA and the simulate tool in the WorldSpace browser extension, you could catch, like half of what's left there, right? So it's 75% of the bugs in a project could be caught simply by using the browser extension. And so that's a big deal, right? That's a lot of stuff that can be done with a simple tool. And it doesn't take a lot of time to do that sort of testing. So really powerful. Now, when we want to go above and beyond that, because we need to certify up to that full WCAG standard, this is where we need to break out the more robust manual testing. And so with that in mind, taking a look at WorldSpace Assure, which is Deque's manual testing support solution, this is, putting forth a comprehensive checklist. There, with this project that I've mocked up here, I'm testing to WCAG 2.1 AA. And so as such, according to the Deque way testing methodology, I have 80 checkpoints that I need to get through to be able to feel confident that I've achieved the level of compliance that I'm looking for. Now, there are resources out in the world, checklists and spreadsheets and stuff, and I know a lot of organizations have their own sort of testing methodology. And as long as you feel confident in what you've got there, then that's your sort of manual testing thing. The benefit of using some tooling here is that not only do I know what to test for, but the tool, here as an example, WorldSpace Assure is going to provide me with support information so that I know step by step how to go through and test for alternative text on active images. And even moreover, not just assuming I'm on desktop web, I've got alternative instructions for mobile web or native mobile or kiosks or PDFs, all the different ways this digital content could be presented. Because there are subtle differences in the way that a user interacts with different assistive technologies, depending on if they're on a mobile device or in a PDF or at a kiosk. And so testing the digital content in these subtle different ways is very important if we want to achieve and feel confident in that level of compliance. Having this level of support is also very powerful as a licensed software tool, because I don't necessarily need to be an accessibility expert. As I said, there's probably a lot of you out there where accessibility is new. You're a very experienced QA, tester, engineer, or manager, but you don't have a ton of accessibility background, and that's super common, right? I mean, there's not an overabundance of accessibility super experts in the world, and if you have some on your team, you should, that's an amazing resource, and that's awesome. But some of your testers or QA teammates might not be accessibility wizards. And that's where support like that's delivered in this tool is really powerful, because the education and the training is built into the tool. So I can be an effective accessibility tester while still being a novice and sort of train as I go, because it's telling me how to do everything. It's telling me how to do the testing and even sometimes how to interpret the results. That's very powerful. Even when it comes to filing bugs, right? If I've, a tool like WorldSpace Assure, what's another great aspect is that if I'm filing a bug, and I maybe I've got an issue here with alternative text on the active images, the tool is going to help me to define specifically what that bug is, and also provide me with remediation advice, right? Me being an accessibility novice, I might not know how to fix that issue, but the tool itself is going to provide me with some really detailed solution information here, so that when I file this issue, and run my report at the end of my testing, and then inject those issues into Jira, there's going to be a nice juicy report for the developer to be able to use the details I provided. Maybe I copy and paste some source code from the browser, or upload a screenshot, and along with my detailed remediation recommendation, the developer knows, again, just like through the automation, what's wrong, where's it wrong, how do I replicate it, and then how do I fix it? Because the developer might not also be an accessibility expert. So one of the onuses on QA here is being able to provide good, detailed information and remediation suggestions, so that the developers can do the job, do it properly, and do it promptly. So proper tooling can really help us achieve all those goals, by educating the tester and helping to support consistent, efficient, and effective reporting when we do find bugs. And so with that, this is kind of our walk through different tooling and how that tooling might help us in QA to achieve the levels of compliance we're after, whether it's automated testing through end-to-end work, browser-based testing with the browser extension and what we can do through automation, or sort of guided manual testing there. And then, what does tooling really give us through proper manual testing and really robust, comprehensive manual testing through a tool like WorldSpace Assure that's delivering education, support, instruction, and issue filing, all for the supporting the manual efforts of the QA team. So we're coming up. Laura said we wanted to save 15 minutes for questions. So just to kind of recap, we talked about why test for accessibility in QA. We talked a lot about how to test for accessibility in QA and the sort of impacts on a person's life there in QA. We demonstrated some of the tooling and how to find, document accessibility bugs to get them back to remediation experts so that they can fix them. Ultimately, it's not just about finding bugs, but it's also about making sure they get fixed, so that in the end of the day, we're all creating accessible, accessible digital content so everybody can have access to our wonderful applications and websites. And I think this is where we move into questions.
Great, thanks, Noah. I have a couple here waiting for you. The first, could you just quickly recap which the tools that you covered are free and which are the paid enterprise versions?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we were working with the browser extension, there is a free browser extension that Deque has put out in the world called Axe. This is a tool people can use in the browser to take scans and understand, what's wrong, where is it wrong, and how do I fix it. There is links to documentation so that people can learn more about these issues. That's a free tool, and people can we open source the library and excuse me, created the browser extension so that there's a trustworthy, resource, no false positives rule set that people can use to test for accessibility. That's a free tool. You can also check out Axe Core on GitHub. That's some awesome open source work being done out there on our Axe community. What you saw me using was our WorldSpace Attest browser extension. This is part of our licensed enterprise developer software for testing for accessibility in development. That's where we get some of the enhanced features like export capabilities and reporting, the simulated AT testing, as well as some other integration stuff like being able to quickly generate those XML reports so that we can integrate with Jenkins. That's part of the WorldSpace Attest toolkit as well, which is an enterprise licensed software. The WorldSpace Assure, our manual testing tool, is again licensed software. This is something that we have developed for accessibility testing in QA specifically. This is a tool that we built that our subject matter experts use in the field because because consistency and efficiency is a big deal. It's hard to achieve, and we do a lot of testing work ourselves for our customers and partners, and we built a tool that helps testers do accessibility testing, do it consistently, and do it efficiently. So that's what that tool is all about. There are other free solutions out there that, like I said, spreadsheets and stuff that provide information on what to test, to achieve certain levels of compliance. We kind of told that story through the lens of our own solution here today, but there are other resources out there.
Great, thanks, Noah. Another question here. Is WorldSpace Attest examples, are they available for C++ Sharp or C#, .NET Visual Studio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the WorldSpace Attest APIs are JavaScript, Java, and Ruby are the three API flavors we support and maintain. There are ways, we have customers that are incorporating, those APIs into their .NET frameworks. I understand that that's not, it's not a direct integration because it's obviously not native .NET anything, but I know that there are ways to use JavaScript or Java or Ruby in the C# environment. And so that the short answer is yes. The long answer is there's obviously a few more notes there. But if you're interested in learning more about that, reach out if you want to take a note, Laura, and we can always follow up afterwards to have a deeper conversation.
Great. Yeah, I'll take a note down to follow up afterwards. Another question here that's a two-parter. What does the pricing model look like for Attest and Assure? And then the second part to that question is, do Assure bugs integrate into Jira tickets?
Yeah. So licensing structure. I know that we do named user licenses. So they come in like packs of 10. I fortunately and unfortunately I don't get involved with the actual numbers in terms of how much they cost, but I know it's named user license, it's subscription, annual subscription. And if you're interested in more information, again, please reach out, or Laura, I don't know if you want to, I don't know how those notes are taken, but somebody can talk to you about pricing. All I know is that it's named user licenses and it's annual subscription based stuff. The other question was about direct Jira importer, right?
Correct.
So we do have a mechanism to take stuff directly from like Assure and port it into Jira. However, taking a long list of issues that have been found and directly importing them into Jira can be a little bit tricky because you probably don't want to create a single ticket for every issue, right? Because that you might have one developer who owns a certain component or a whole page or some section of the website, and you might be better off grouping those accessibility bugs in some logical way so that you create the right number of tickets or right separation of bugs into certain tickets that makes more sense for your organization and your product. So we actually, most of our customers export to CSV so that they can triage the error report and create more intelligent, more tailored Jira tickets for their organization. That being said, there are solutions out there to directly import or export to Jira importer, however you want to say that. But again, short answer is yes, but long answer is it's not always the best solution to go straight into Jira because having that touch in between can actually build in, again, an efficiency. The goal of all of this strategy is building in as much efficiency as possible with this testing and reporting.
Great, thanks, Noah. I have a question here from Christian. They ask, they saw a test result for a video that was missing an audio description. How, maybe we could touch briefly on how exactly do our automated testing rules work?
I'm guessing that was on this page where we can take a scan and run again. Yeah, so this is an interesting one because, excuse me, the rule set that I'm using is providing me in some instances with things that it knows for sure to be issues. We've also got some is this an issue, like a not a best practice, but needs review. That's the word I'm looking for. Needs review rules, where essentially the automated rule set is sensing that there is a video element here, and it's asking me, the tester, does this thing have captions? And so it's up to me to play the video and assert whether or not it has captions. And if it does have captions, I click this box that says this is not an issue, and I save it, and it removes it from my list. The second one is, video elements must have an audio description track. And so if that does not exist, then I say that that is an issue. I can provide some more details here, more details, and save the issue. And so now that's filed in the same issue report here through the extension. So the tool is sort of going above and beyond simply what we can directly assert through automation and providing me with some extra coverage by a couple of simple interactions with me, the tester.
Great, thanks, Noah. Have another question here, asking about how do our tools, the two very different tools that you talked about, a test and assure, how do they differ from our competitors?
There's a lot of tools out there, and I like to think that given what our industry does, right, in trying to make an accessible internet, that's good. We love that there's other people out there fighting the same fight that we're all fighting. I think the biggest differentiator with Deque in general is our rule set. So the Deque, the Axe Core rule set, our no false positives rule set is a big deal. I mean, there's a large community. We recently just crossed over 10 million downloads of the Axe Core stuff, so that's a big deal. It's out there being used by some substantial organizations. It's sort of become the gold standard of automated accessibility testing rule sets. Axe Core rules are being used in a lot of different other free tools out there, I guess I should say. And so that's really where we hang our hat is those rules, and that's our biggest differentiator. I mean, there's other features and things that we're doing that other people aren't doing. I don't know of other manual testing tools like Assure that provide remediation advice for the non-automated rules, right? So us having being able to leverage that remediation library as part of our manual testing tool is a feature differentiation. There are other small feature, well, not small, but there are other feature differentiators. But I think the big one, the most concise one, is really our rule set, and the fact that the Axe core rules is sort of the de facto automated testing gold standard for accessibility, testing.
Great, thanks, Noah. Follow-up question to the video captioning issue that you were showing. Is there a way, say you went and you saved and you said this is not an issue, is there a way to go back and add it back to the list of issues?
Yeah, with the test here, if I refresh the page, yeah, I'd probably have to clear cache and refresh to get that back. So, yes, there is a way to do that. So it appears to have saved it here in the cache. I'd have to refresh the browser to get it back.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Another question here is a test and a sure, can those be used to test things like Google Docs?
Testing Google Docs with a test. I mean, you could run it in the browser to do that sort of testing, and it would pick up on what it can pick up on, because it's here in the browser. Assuming I can get access to that here. Although this whole testing environment, it's going to start picking up on all kinds of stuff, specifically pointing it at the Google Doc, not necessarily, but just with the browser extension, man, I can run it in the browser and see what I get back, and it might be helpful. But the tool itself, it doesn't have any built-in PDF rules or anything like that. So it's more about the browser-based content. So we're sort of now testing the accessibility of the Google Docs or Google Slides environment, which may not be exactly what you're after. So, but that's an interesting question. I'd be curious to know the use case there. So maybe we could follow up after the webinar and discuss.
Sounds good. I'll make that note, Noah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question here. What type of access is there for the tool AGET, the test getter?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think if you've been in some of the other webinars, but one of the facets of the WorldSpace Attest toolkit that very well could be a strong asset to any QA automation engineer or QA tester who's looking to do some sort of scripted testing is our AGET. A test getter is our CLI scripting tool that allows me to create scripts. I can use my browser extension to create a script where I maybe come in and file a PTO request. I could submit that, and then I could stop my recording, play it back. But I could scan for accessibility at the different pages and things that are rendered. And so using AGET combined with the extension here allows me to very quickly generate scripts so that I can automate data-driven user flows and test those. AGET is a feature of the Attest toolkit, is not a feature of the free tools. So that is something that is part of the enterprise software package. But yeah, so that is a capability of Attest that people can use. And because it's a CLI, it's very easily integrated into again, like a CI process, right? So if you want to use it to develop some scripted testing to run during builds, you could very easily do that through shell commands and again, using the built-in reporter to spit out the XML test results.
Great, thanks, Noah. Quick question here. So we've talked a lot about how manual testing is a necessary part of, reaching accessibility compliance and doing a comprehensive accessibility as a part of your SDLC. which can be done through guided manual testing and Assure, but would you recommend, we know it's not possible for all QA testers to be accessibility experts, but would you recommend training as a part of the accessibility process?
Always, always. I mean, you'll find all over the place in our tools, free or otherwise. Whenever we're putting out information, there's always learn more or links or things so that people can learn more about accessibility and learn more about why things matter and different standards and whatnot. That training is a key foundation to, again, a sustainable practice. All of these efforts are driving towards, sustainability for good, sustainability for all, or excuse me, accessibility for good, accessibility for all. And training is a huge part of that, right? If we don't have training and don't understand what we're doing, it's way harder for us to remember that these things are important and remember how they work and remember how to fix them. And so training is a vital part of a sustainable accessibility practice.
Great, thanks, Noah. So it looks like we've come to the end of our questions. So we'll wrap up a little bit early. I just want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar. I've made some notes for follow-up, but just a friendly reminder, we were recording this and we'll be sending out the slides as well as the recording to everybody via email. So keep an eye out for that, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.